I do not remember another IV that has hurt as bad as that one. It sincerely felt like she took a number 2 pencil and shoved it in my arm. Like, that is how much it hurt. That is how big it felt. It was awful. Okay, I am currently rendering the pain management video, the first one. So I am going to tell you guys about, so this is number 5 medical appointment-ish in the Poopy week. So, and if you're not caught up yet, I have a whole playlist named Poopy Week, and all the videos are numbered 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, blah blah blah. So last video I had the emergency GI appointment. Everything was causing problems, so I was told to go to the ER to get fluid. So from where my GI building is to where the emergency room is for my big hospital, it's literally like you leave the building, you go down a tiny bit, take a left, take a right, you're at the emergency room. Very, very quick. So I got over there about 4 o'clock, and it didn't look like there was that many vehicles like in the parking garage and stuff, and so I was lulled into a false sense of security that it was going to be okay. And so I get inside, and there are so many people in there. It is the most busy I have ever seen it. So obviously my first thought is, do I want to stay or do I want to leave? If I leave, I still have to get fluid, which means I'm going to have to come back, which also means I would have to make another drive into Dallas, which is really, really hard on me right now. And so I finally just decided to suck it up and stick it out. So I go in there, and there are like 2 paramedics at the front counter with a guy on a gurney who is a little bit of an odd duck. Trying to get him checked in, and then there was a like a father-son people in front of me, and so they got the guy in the gurney checked in and moved, and then the son and father get checked in, and then I got checked in, and I mean, they're still calling people, you know, nonstop to do triage and all that. So my emergency room, you register, they take your vitals and they take your temperature, you get your hospital band after you know, give them all your information and hoobie tell them what's wrong. And then you normally wait a little bit, and then a nurse calls you into triage to talk about all the things and you know, figure out what doctor you're gonna see and what needs to happen from there. So if they're not that busy once you're in triage, then you go directly back to a room and the process starts. This was not that day. So I went into triage, told them what was going on, caught them up, because this is my 4th ER trip of the year, and it's only February. So we did the triage thing, and then I went back to the waiting room, and I waited pretty good amount of time. And then they called me back into a different triage room, and I was gonna that's not a word. I was gonna meet one of the student nurse practitioners, I think, like to go over all the things. And so she came in, went over all the things, made some stupid comments, super I don't even remember what they were, but I just remember just being like, oh my gosh, like it's so frustrating going to the emergency room. And then she's like, okay, we're gonna, you know, stay in here for just a minute, and then we're gonna do blood work so the labs can be, you know, percolating while we try to find a room. And so I waited in there what felt like forever, walk out into the hallway, and they had this other like kind of like mini lab set up. So I had to pee in a cup. Oh, because that's the thing. And then they took blood for labs and whatnot. So we did all that, and I told her all the things, you know, about trying to take my blood, veins being weird and all this stuff. So she did pretty good, minimal amount of digging. And then she does the standard thing, you know, put a gauze thing over it, you know, take out the needle and then hold it there for a little bit. And then she's trying to get like the Band-Aid and stuff on, and I'm just like bleeding down my arm. So she ended up blowing that vein. So it's right there. Like you can see the shadow of it. Like it's just, oh lordy, that one hurt. So we put more pressure on it, and then, you know, super rappy-do and whatever. So then I go back to the waiting room again, and I'm still waiting to really register. Like you register your name and why you're there and whatnot when you first go in, but then you have to actually go to like a big registration. They verify all of your health insurance information and make you sign all the waivers for care and hoobie. And so I waited out there again for forever, and I finally went through the all registration thing, and then I sat there a while longer, and then they called me and another guy at the same time, and we were gonna go have x-rays done. And they almost always do x-rays on my abdomen since I have so much problems. They just obviously want to make sure, you know, I don't have any impaction or any of that stuff. So the other guy that went back with me, he was in a motorized wheelchair, and they took him first because it was going to take him a lot longer since they had to do all sorts of manipulation and whatnot, you know, trying to get him in and out of the wheelchair and all that stuff. And so I'm freezing in the hallway, end up finally being pulled into the side room because it was warmer, and went there, got all my x-rays done, which there was like excuse me. So I think I had like 2 or 3 standing up, 2 or 3 laying down, and I was chit-chatting with the imaging tech, and he was about to start the x-rays, and he was like, oh my gosh, I almost forgot to ask you, you know, is there any possibility that you could be pregnant? And I was like, oh no, I said I had a hysterectomy like 10 years ago. And he like stops what he was doing on the machine and then just looks at me, and I was like, yeah? And he was like, how in the world could you be old enough to have a hysterectomy? And I was like, well, happened when I was 29 and now I'm 39. And he was like, you are shitting me. It was really funny. And he was like, I thought you were like 19, 20 years old. And I was like, no, I just look like a baby. And I said, which is totally fine with me because I'll always look younger than my age, which totally delighted me. So he was 5 months older than I was, and we just hit it off and were chatting. And so we did the rest of the x-rays laying down, which is super hard for me because you have to lay flat, and it always upsets my insides. So we did that. Transport was going to come back and get me even though I didn't want a wheelchair, but they have to have somebody escort you and whatnot. And so my imaging tech ended up walking me back to the waiting room, and we walked in there, and he was like, hey, hold on a second. So he asked the guys at the desk, you know, does she have a room yet? You know, and I could just walk her to it because we were still chatting. And they looked and they were like, no, not yet, you know, still have a, you know, ways to go. Thanked him profusely. I sat down again. So at this point, I've been there with all the stuff that's going on and the back and forth and whatever, 4.5 hours. And then they make an announcement, and there's tons of sick people. There are all sorts of people hacking and coughing, masks on and the whole thing. And all I can think is I'm totally gonna get sick. And I was like, this is why I can't do this anymore. Like, it's just, it puts me at such a higher risk for infection, and my body can't take anything else. So we're at 4.5 hours at this point. They finally tell all of us in the waiting room that there are no beds left in the emergency room. And so they have to make beds in the hospital so that they can move the people in the emergency room beds to the regular hospital before any of us are gonna get a room. And so I'm just like, oh my gosh. So of course I'm thinking the same thing that like everybody else is thinking. Do I just want to leave? But at this point, I'm done with everything except for the actually getting the help that I need for being there. And so I decided to just suck it up and stay. Okay, so that was 4.5 hours. So another hour and a half goes by, so I'm at about 6 hours. My feed runs out, and starts alarming because it runs out. So I have to go in the bathroom for the emergency room floor, and then I'm in there and I'm trying to get everything, unhooked, because I didn't bring any extra, because first, I wasn't planning on going to the doctor that day. Second, I wasn't planning on going to the emergency room, and that I never expected to be there that long. So feed runs out, I unhook it, I flush it. It's flushing super weird. And the kink in the end is just like, it's really bad at the moment. So I did all that, and I came back out, and I've been watching like the other people in the room, trying to figure out, because I recognized, some of the people that I knew were in front of me. And so the couple, like the dad and the son that were in front of me, they weren't in the waiting room anymore. And then the other person that had been in the gurney, like almost as soon as I walk out, he was called back. And I was like, oh, praise the Lord, like I have to be close. And then they started calling other people that I know got there behind me. And so finally at one point, like I'm walking up to the front to try to figure out, like, did I get missed, because I was in the bathroom, or what happened? And like I'm walking up to the front and they call my name. And I was like, that's me. And so he was like, oh, I called you earlier. And I said, that's why I was walking up here. I said I had to go unhook my feeding tube and whatnot. And of course that was the one, point I picked to go to the bathroom. And so he takes me into the back. I have a really close room, which was nice. The tech comes up, it comes in, and I get changed and get everything, She gets all the monitors hooked up, and we were talking about my tattoos. And anyway, she wanted to see all of them. It was funny. A little manhandly trying to see my tattoos, which was a little weird. I waited forever, finally got my nurse practitioner. I didn't see an actual doctor, even though they did the same thing. And so she comes in and she asked me, why am I there? And so I filled her in, and she was like, well, your blood work pretty much looks okay. Like there's certain things that are always weird on mine. But everything else, it shows I'm dehydrated. It showed I was borderline UTI again. And I'm now dumping ketones and protein again. So my malnutrition is kicking in because I just can't eat enough and I can't feed enough. And so she was like, what normally makes you feel better? And I was like, give me the biggest bag of fluid you can get. And I said, bolus the whole thing. And at this point, I'm tired. I've been out 6.5 hours at this point. I've been at the hospital, like the emergency room, for 6.5 hours, plus drive to Dallas, plus drive to work, plus all the work that I had to get done beforehand. And I feel bad, like, all the time. And so my nurse finally comes in with everything to get my IV started, and she was like, okay, she's like, I've looked through all the stuff and it looks like you're a hard stick. And she's like, where am I gonna have the best luck? And I was like, that'd be that arm that they already blew, so you're gonna have to try this one, and good luck. And so she's looking and she's looking, she's poking and she's poking, and she was like, do they normally have to sonogram your arms to like get a vein? And I said no, because they can normally stick that arm because it's still not blown. And I was like, and I told her all the things, like, you can't dig, I'm gonna pass out or puke or both. And I said, my body can't handle any of that right now. And I said, I would rather you take it all out and re-stick me than trying to dig for stuff it's not there. And she was like, you know, I've done this 30 years. I promise I won't dig. And it's like, it's a double-handed thing. Like, I'm glad you have a lot of experience, but unfortunately you don't have a lot of experience on bodies like mine. And so then they tend to have this like overinflated ego that they're of course not going to have any trouble because they've done it for so long. Can you tell I've been through this before? And then she starts looking again, and she was like, well, I could maybe put it in underneath the blowout. And I was like, I'm good, because it already hurt really bad, and I couldn't imagine having another, you know, 2x4 shoved in my arm. And so she ends up trying my right arm. Thankfully, I was leaning back. So she puts the you know, IV catheter or whatever in. I do not remember another IV that has hurt as bad as that one. It sincerely felt like she took a number 2 pencil and shoved it in my arm. Like, that is how much it hurt. That is how big it felt. It was awful. So of course she puts it in, and she was like, okay, I'm in, and there's no blood return, which is always how it goes. And she was like, oh. And I was like, I tried to warn you, you know. And so what does she start doing? She starts digging, even though we had the whole conversation, whatever. So I black out. And sometimes I don't completely lose consciousness, which is what happened this time. So I totally black out. Like, I get tunnel vision and literally totally black. I can't see anything. I can't hear anything except for my own breathing. And so I'm sitting there like deep breathing, and I can feel me like opening and closing my hand. It's one of my biofeedback mechanisms to try to help the pain and the freak out and whatever. And so I'm coming back to, and she finally got it in place. And she was like, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. And I was like, you know, all I can do is try to explain, you know, what's going to happen. And I mean, I'd say 25% of people listen, the other 75% just, they're so sure of themselves and so sure that they can do it, no problems, that's just how it is. And so she got the IV and got the bag hooked up. And so they bolus it, which means they hang the bag of fluid, and it's not connected to a pump at all. It free flows as fast as your body will take the fluid. So normally, I'm doing better not waiting so long to go ask for help. And so normally it takes me about an hour to get 1,200 cc's of fluid. So at 40 minutes, I only had 100 cc's left. And I was having some alarm going on in the back, but my fingers read a little bit weird because of my acrylic nails, and so it reads like sideways. And if I do something else or I turn, like it crimps something over there. So anyways, I was having trouble reading my respiration. So my nurse came in, and then my nurse practitioner came in to make sure that I was okay, which was sweet. And so they were chilling, or they were sitting there asking me questions and whatnot. And the nurse practitioner was like, you know, well, how do you feel? And you can always tell that they're expecting me to be like, I feel amazing. And I was like, oh no, I feel horrible. I said, I'll feel horrible for about the next 12 hours. And I said, because I have not enough liquid all of a sudden to too much liquid. Too much is strong, but a lot of volume of fluid that's being put into my system. And I said, it takes my body about a half a day to kind of like realize it's okay. And then my whole body will take a deep breath. And she was like, oh my gosh, but you can't, like, I can't let you sleep in the ER for 12 hours, you know, I'm gonna have to admit you. And I was like, no, you don't. I said, you just let me go. And I was like, all you have to do is discharge me. And I know I should have waited to get another, like a second bag of fluid. But at this point, it's like 11:15. I'm done. I'm so tired, and I still have an hour to drive home. And she was like, are you really okay with me discharging you? And I was like, oh yes. I said, I'm not staying. I said, there's no way I'm staying. I'm not gonna risk it, like a 3-4 day admission for being dehydrated again. And And so she was like, okay, you know, and she goes, I really wish that more patients were like you. And I said, what, being so willing to be kicked out? And she said, no, being so knowledgeable about your body, being so knowledgeable about all of your conditions. And she goes, you have a laundry list of stuff that's going on. And I was like, you know, any patient needs to be their biggest advocate. And I said, but with somebody with my medical history and all the stuff that I'm dealing with, and I was like, you have to advocate for yourself. And I say, I know what I need, I know what my body needs, and staying in the hospital is not what I need right now. She was like, okay, I'll absolutely work on your papers. And so in my mind, that's like, done. Paperwork, come unhook all my stuff so I can go home. Never works like that. So an hour later, I'm still there. I'm so tired. And then my nurse finally comes back in. And she gets everything unhooked, and then she takes out my IV. So it starts bleeding down my arm. So this one blew too. But I've never been so glad, I don't think, to get an IV out of my arm. It hurt as bad as the moment it went in, feeling like that number 2 pencil, it felt like a number 2 pencil the entire time it was in. It was awful. And of course, it's right in the crook of my elbow. So, you know, like, you feel kind of like gimpy armed, like you can't do anything because it's just, oh, it was awful. So anyway, she finally got unhooked, which was great. I pulled all my EKG stickers since I normally have a reaction to them. My sugar was 80 in the hospital, so I didn't have to treat when I was there, which was great. And my potassium was barely within range, which I'm so thankful for, because when I got in the room before I had everything hooked up, I tried to flush my tube again, and it was completely clogged. There was nothing I was doing that was getting through it. So with potassium, I can't have IV potassium because it burns like fire in my body, but I can push it through my J. But now I can't push it through my J because it's clogged, and I can't drink that stuff. It is so nasty. They say it's supposed to taste like orange soda. Yeah, no orange soda tastes like that. Is so gross. So anyways, my potassium was barely within a normal range, so I didn't have to treat for that either, which was super good. Finally got discharged, and oh my gosh, one other thing. When I had my x-rays done, I was talking to the tech when I was trying to get, you know, like all put back together, and I was like, hey, you know, can I see the x-rays, because I've never actually seen my tube, like the inside of me. And he was like, oh my gosh, of course. And so he came and he showed me all the x-rays, and so I could see, you know, like where my stoma is, and I could see where the tube was, and I could see where it was flipped and the whole thing. Anyways, it was really kind of cool. I couldn't take a picture though, so, because I totally wanted to, because I totally wanted to put it in here. And okay, so I got discharged, and I'm on the way home. I'm so tired. I get home, crashed so hard. So that's Tuesday. So Wednesday, I was pretty much a zombie at work. Like I was so exhausted. Got about halfway through the day. The hydration finally, you know, kind of settled a little bit, so I felt a little bit better, which was great. And then came home Wednesday night, fell asleep at 8:15, 8:30, like I crashed this off. I was so tired. Slept until 11:30, and I slept right here actually. And I slept until about 11:30, and then I woke up and moved, did like my nighttime stuff and whatever, and got in bed, and I was just gonna watch a little bit of like videos or whatever. I never was able to fall back asleep. Like I tried again at 2 something, I tried again at 3 something, and it was just like I was so awake. Oh, so annoying. So I got up and I went to work on Thursday, and I already had this tickle started, like right here, and the whole and I was just like shaking my head, because what do you do? Like I had to go to the emergency room for fluid. I'm totally screwed. Knew I was gonna get whatever Ebola they had going around the emergency room. And so Thursday I had the tickle going like the whole time, and then I get home. I felt worse the whole day. Finally get home. The fever started that night. Cough started that night. So I woke up off and on like all of Thursday night, and woke up full-blown flu on Friday. And oh my gosh, I felt so bad. So the cough is horrible. I sound like I have sexy phlegm from Friends. Smelly cat, smelly cat. I can't breathe very well. Fever has come and gone, just a low grade, which is better than something horrible. And so on Friday, I texted and I was like, I have a bone in my leg. I was like, I'm not coming, which was a total lie. And then they were like, okay, we're gonna park in your parking spots. You can't, you can't come in. You have to stay home and rest, which was not even like possible because I had to pay all the bills, which I hadn't done yet. I had double payroll. There's so much stuff going on at work. And so I ended up going to work and felt horrible the whole day and coughed the whole day. So needless to say, I have ordered Vogue masks and they're supposed to be here Monday. So I will start carrying that around with me in my go bag that's with me all the time. Because getting sick is so hard on my body on top of everything else. So got some fluids. And then it's like worst case scenario. I'm there for 9 hours. I was there 9 hours. I get sick because I'm there because the infection rate is so high in the hospital. You're incubating in it because there's nowhere you can go. This is worst case. So I end up sending a message to my head GI on Friday and tell her about the horrible and how bad it was and that they blew 2 veins and I only got 1 bag of fluid because they ran out of rooms and and my feeding ran out. My feeding tube got clogged. I mean, it was literally like everything that could possibly just kind of like spiraled into the poop. And so she ended up calling me that night. And so I've got 2 more videos to make to get you guys totally caught up on the poopy week. But the next 2 things are actually pretty cool. So it's been a long week. So I am going to take a nap and I will see you guys in a little bit.